In 1963, a scientist by the name of Chan Thomas sent his book to his agent for publishing. Thomas' book was titled The Adam and Eve Story. Unlike the title, the book wasn't religious whatsoever. Instead, it had information that the CIA at the time deemed too dangerous to publish. We only learned about it a few years ago when it was declassified in 2013. But the CIA only released a sanitized 57 pages of the original manuscript. After people started reading its released documents, they realized it was a book with information that could impact everyone on Earth. But it wasn't talking about religion. It was predicting the end of the world. Chan Thomas was a former McDonnell Douglas scientist and engineer. McDonnell Douglas was a military aerospace contractor who made the F-15 fighter jets and its variants before its own merger with Boeing in 1997. The religious story of Adam and Eve is embedded in almost every ancient tradition on Earth today. A couple, a male and a female, who gave birth to humanity. However, in Thomas's released documents, he argues that we are actually the sixth advanced civilization to evolve on Earth, and Adam and Eve are just survivors from the previous cataclysm. There may have been more civilizations that have been there, but the further back you go, the harder it is to know for sure, because some of these civilizations occupied continents that no longer exist. Thomas presented a lot of evidence of a coming disaster, a coming shift in the Earth's poles that creates a cataclysm that would wipe out the whole world, and there is nothing we can do to stop it. Thomas isn't the first to publish this theory. In 1958, 5 years before the Adam and Eve story, Charles Hapgood published The Earth's Shifting Crust, which promotes the Earth crustal displacement hypothesis. This theory says that sometimes the Earth spins really fast and the continents starts to move and rearrange. When Hapgood proposed the idea of continental drift, it was called pseudoscience, but Hapgood has his supporters. In fact, Albert Einstein wrote the forewords for 2 of his books. Of course, now we know that Hapgood was right. The continents do in fact move because of plate tectonics. They drift apart and collide together over and over again, and have done so as long as the Earth was formed. Pangaea was the last supercontinent that broke apart to form the landmasses that exist today. But before Pangaea, there were more supercontinents, such as Gondwana, Rodinia, Arctica, Laurasia, and many more. They were supercontinents that eventually broke apart and reformed. And guess what? All of these supercontinents had its own civilization. After working with Einstein and a few other scientists, Hapgood released the book The Path of the Pole in 1970 as an update to his previous theories. In this book, Hapgood suggested that the Earth's poles are constantly moving. Again, this theory was eventually proven true. Hapgood believed that a pole shift between 15 and 40 degrees occurred around 9600 BC, or 11,600 years ago, when the Great Flood was said to have occurred. The Peri-Reis map is something that has baffled scientists for hundreds of years. On the Peri-Reis map is the continent of Antarctica, but Antarctica wasn't discovered until 1820, and Peri-Reis claimed information on his maps came from much older maps. If Charles Hapgood was right, and Earth's axis was shifted 15 degrees from where it is now, Antarctica wouldn't be completely covered in ice. Check out the Secrets of Antarctica and the link below. Hapgood believed that an Ice Age civilization, long forgotten, mapped the coast thousands of years ago. Though many Hapgood's theories have been proven to be true, the Ice Age pole shift is still controversial. We do know the poles shift over time. We also know the continents drift over a very long period, but Chan Thomas, in his book The Adam and Eve Story, says the shift happens in less than a day. Chan Thomas describes in details what this shift will be like, and it's worse than any Hollywood disaster movie ever conceived. Chan Thomas begins his book with a chapter that describes exactly what we'll experience during this pole shift.
With a rumble so low, it is to be confused into a thundering roar. The earthquake starts, only it's not like any earthquake in history. In California, mountains shake like ferns in a breeze. A mighty Pacific rears back and piles up into a mountain of seawater, more than 2 miles high, then starts its race eastward. The wind attacks, shredding everything in supersonic bombardment. The unholy mountain of Pacific seawater follows the wind eastward, burying Los Angeles and San Francisco as if they were bright grains of sand. Across the continent, the 1,000 miles per hour wind wreaks unholy havoc everywhere, mercilessly. In many places, the Earth's molten sublayer breaks through and spreads a sea of white-hot liquid fire in a fraction of a day. All vestiges of civilization are gone, and the great cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Dallas, New York, are nothing but legends. Barely a stone is left where millions walked just a few hours ago. South America finds the Andes not high enough to stop the violence. In less than a day, the entire continent is burned by molten rock, buried under miles of violent seas, then turned into a frozen hell. Everything freezes: man, beast, land, and mud in less than 4 hours. Europe cannot escape. The Alps, Pyrenees, Urals, shaken and heaved even higher when the wall of seawater strikes. Western Africa and the sands of the Sahara vanish. The fury marches on for 6 days. During the 6th day, the ocean starts to tackle. The Bay of Bengal, just east of India, is now at the North Pole. The Pacific Ocean, just west of Peru, is at the South Pole. New ice caps begin to form in the new polar areas. Greenland and Antarctica is now rotating at the equator. New York lies at the bottom of the Atlantic, covered by unbelievable amounts of mud. San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Dallas, not a trace is left. The cataclysm has done its work and drives the pitiful few who survive into a new Stone Age. We join Noah, Adam and Eve, Atlantis, New and Olympus. Jesus joins Osiris, Tara, Zeus, and Vishnu.
In the first chapter of his book, Thomas paints a terrifying future. But how likely is it to happen? In the next few chapters, Thomas goes on to not only prove his pole shift as possible, but it's happened before and will happen again very soon. In fact, there are signs it may have already begun. Flood myths appear across cultures worldwide, from Abrahamic religions, Noah's flood, to the Mayan hurricane, origin of the word hurricane, and the Sumerian tale in Gilgamesh. These stories depict a great deluge that cleansed the earth and paved the way for civilization. While one myth might be considered folklore, the sheer number of over 20 suggests a possible basis in reality. Scientists believe these myths could be linked to the real floods at the end of the last ice age, particularly the Younger Dryas period. Core samples show evidence of a such flood. Interestingly, Chan Thomas emphasizes on a major flood around 6,500 years ago, a time frame supported by recent archaeological discoveries of floods and myths in China, the Mediterranean, and the Black Sea. Thomas goes further, proposing additional floods at specific points in history, aligning with major geological events like the submergence of the Bering Land Bridge and the end of the glacial periods. Global floods themselves are not disputed, but the claims of advanced civilization preceding them is controversial. Mainstream archaeology places the rise of the first civilization in Mesopotamia around 6,500 years ago. However, Thomas suggests this might be a restart after an aerial civilization. He points to water erosion patterns around the Great Sphinx as evidence of its construction predating the last flood, and by extension, the Egyptian civilization. This idea is highly contested by archaeologists, who reject the notion of a sphinx predating 10,000 years ago. But there is other evidence of a cataclysmic pole shift and specifically of a great mud flood and a sunken continent, some might call Atlantis. While some interpretations of the Adam and Eve story, the one like Chan Thomas, contains outlandish claims, the principles remain true. Plato's famous dialogues introduced Atlantis, a supposedly advanced civilization destroyed by a cataclysm. Despite its lack of proven existence, the search for Atlantis ruins remain. A geological oddity in northwest Africa, the Richard structure, or the Eye of the Sahara, with its concentric rings, holds a resemblance to Plato's description, though its original natural or man-made remains debated even among believers. Even more fascinating are the massive wave-like features found near the place. These ripples, towering 50 feet above the ground, hint at a colossal amount of water once flowing through these regions. These unique formations stand as the geological enigma, a potential fingerprint of an ancient, unprecedented flood. Imagine a tsunami, 1,000 feet deep, carrying unimaginable 200 or 300 million cubic feet of water per second, surging across the land. This is the theorized destruction of Atlantis, but it might be alone. Across the globe lies Mu, a lost continent mentioned in ancient Mayan and Indian texts. According to interpretations by Augustus Lee and James Churchward, these cultures, despite vast distance, describe a vast Pacific continent reaching from Hawaii to the north to Easter Island in the south, and nearly brushing Japan in the west. Proponents like James Bromwell and William Scott Elliott believe Mu meets its end in a cataclysm 11,500 years ago. The Angani monument of Japan is said to be Mu's underwater ruins, and Micronesia, with its massive stone structures, could be the sunken continent's southern tip. Even more fascinating, recent LiDAR imaging reveals a sophisticated irrigation system once existed on Namdal, hinting at an advanced Mu civilization. The lost continent of Mu supposedly stretches all the way to Easter Island, where evidence of a cataclysm might lie. The iconic Maui statues, those gigantic heads, actually have buried bodies, hinting at a purposeful burial or a covering catastrophe. This raises questions. Did the builders dig enormous holes, carefully place the statues and then refill the earth? Or were the statues actually fully exposed and later buried by a massive event? Easter Island remoteness fueled to the fire. How did 12,000 people end up on this tiny speck of island? Traditional explanations suggest a long, risky Polynesian canoe voyage, but with Mu, they could have simply walked there. This theory, if true, could explain the surprising similarities between Polynesian languages and Greek, or the existence of an Eastern Island sun god named Ra, strikingly similar to the Egyptian sun god Ra. These connections extend further, with parallels found between deities of Greek, Egyptian, and even Indian cultures. While Chan Thomas presents intriguing evidence for a cyclical cataclysm, the key mysteries remain: when and how will it occur? Understanding the supposed mechanism is crucial. Thomas incorporates a diagram within his work, depicting a cross-section of the Earth alongside his explanation. This diagram highlights two crucial molten layers, visualized as orange sections. The key layer is the thinner one, situated 60 miles below the surface and extending another 60 miles deeper. Deeper still lies the thicker molten layer, the aerocore, starting at 1800 miles and reaching 1300 miles further down. According to Thomas, seismology confirms both layers are molten and extremely hot, exceeding 2500 degrees Fahrenheit. According to Chan Thomas, the Earth's interior structure plays a key role in his theory of cyclical cataclysms. He proposes that a thin molten layer, combined with the planet's electrical and magnetic fields, keep the Earth rotating on its axis in a stable manner. However, a few thousand years, this delicate balance goes haywire. In Thomas' view, the electrical and magnetic order weakens, allowing the molten layer to act like a lubricant. This, he suggests, allows the ice caps to exert a powerful force, pulling the Earth's crust and shifting the poles by 90 degrees towards the equator. This dramatic shift, according to the theory, triggers a chain reaction. The solid layer beneath the crust supposedly liquefies, allowing land masses to move freely. The immense weight of the displaced ice caps then pulls the Earth off its axis rapidly. This catastrophic event, as Thomas describes it, leaves the Earth's atmospheres and oceans unchanged in their rotations. At the equator, this movement reaches speeds exceeding 1,000 miles per hour. The result? Devastating winds and massive tsunamis sweep across the Earth at supersonic speeds, throwing continents around and causing widespread destruction. So when is all this supposed to happen? In 1993, Chan Thomas revised his prediction for a major Earth axis shift, claiming it would occur around the year 2000. Just 7 years later, while his credibility as a researcher remains questionable, some of his book's claims hold surprising amount of truth. Global floods, for instance, are a documented reality with evidence all around us. However, Thomas confuses the source. These floods, particularly for those from the younger dry periods, weren't caused by overflowing oceans, but by ravaged glacial melt. Despite their origin, they were undeniably destructive, triggering massive tsunamis hundreds of feet high and significant sea level rise. Thomas further suggests a dramatic temperature plunge that instantly freezes everything solid. He cites mammoths found frozen mid-meal with flowers in their mouths as evidence. This phenomenon is indeed true. Frozen mammoths have been discovered. However, unlike a slow frozen steak, flash freezing a mammoth would require exceptionally extreme conditions. Chan Thomas points to seismic activity as a factor in Earth's axis shift. This has some scientific basis. NASA documented that major earthquakes, like those in Indonesia in 2004, Chile in 2010, and Japan in 2011, caused slight shifts in the North Pole and slight reductions in the Earth's day length. However, these effects are temporary. Earthquakes provide a small speed boost, but the moon's gravitational pull acts as brake, keeping things relatively balanced. A more pressing concern might be the shifting magnetic poles. Earth's magnetic fields flips occasionally, with the north and south poles reversing. Geological records indicate these flips occur hundreds of times over millions of years. While the average interval is 300,000 years, it's been nearly 800,000 years since the last one. How do you know flips happens? Rocks record the Earth's magnetic orientation when they form from erupting lava, acting like a magnetic tape recorder. Magnetic poles are constantly on the move. In the early 90s, the North Pole drifted about 9 miles annually, and this rate is accelerating. This rapid movement necessitates frequent updates to GPS systems, from every 5 years in the 90s to every 6 months now. The pole is estimated to drift about almost 40 miles this year, and the Earth's magnetic field is weakening. Could a pole shift be happening soon? While Chan Thomas' book raises concerns about potential future challenges, its credibility suffers from a lack of scientific rigors and a mix of valid science with unsubstantiated claims. This makes it difficult to separate fact from fiction. However, the possibility of disruption from factors like pole shifts and solar activity remains a valid area for scientific inquiry, even if it's not connected to Thomas' scientific prediction. So should we be worried? The probability of that happening in our lifetime is practically near zero, so life will go on. And for the meantime, the poles will just drift lightly every year. Anyways, that's the whole story behind the book of Chan Thomas. If you want to read the book, there is a link in the description. If you want the full story about Atlantis, it's there as well. Now, all you have to do is subscribe and like the video. I know I sound like a broken record, but it really helps the channel. This is Jeff, and this has been another episode of Mysteries Unraveled. See you in the next one.